Now, after a 3-week search, the body of missing mother Nicola Bulley was formally identified yesterday. Her family paying Will a heartbreaking tribute, saying, "We can let you rest now." But there is growing criticism this morning about how officers handled that case, reigniting the whole issue of trust in our police force. Well, join me now, Labour MP Jess Phillips, Shadow Minister for Domestic Violence and Safeguarding. Well, what she's calling for is more neighbourhood police to somehow rebuild that trust, because we've got to, haven't we? It's broken.
Yeah. There is... I've never known a time in my life where women, specifically women, feel so let down by the police and weary of them. And for the women I work with, and so, you know, like the women that Susanna was just talking about there, who've suffered sexual violence, who've suffered domestic violence, it's just, it's not a privilege that they can afford. They have to be able to trust the police. We need to be able to rely on police officers. And so we've got to find a way of rebuilding that community trust. And so what we want to see is proper neighbourhood police teams back in our communities to do that work. Because
I think when you see that happening, when you see Bobby's on the beat, as it was called, it does give you a sense of security, and it does act as a deterrent. We know that.
But the amount of, I mean, when I was growing up in Birmingham, post sort of gang violence in the city that I grew up in, and quite a lot of distrust in the police, huge amounts of effort went into neighbourhood police officers doing things like going into schools, going and working in communities and doing that community work that often gets sort of, you know, people will say it's meaningless and they shouldn't be doing it. But if you're a woman and you live on a street and your husband's bashing you, you're much more likely to speak to the PCSO or the Bobby on the beat that you saw at your kid's school doing the work. I actually don't think we can build rebuild the trust and confidence that have been lost in the case of Sarah Everard, in the case of David Carrick, without doing this vital bit of community policing that rebuilds that trust in our neighbourhoods. And so, you know, Labour will put in place 13,000 new police officers specifically to do that neighbourhood work again.
That is vital. Also, recruitment is vital, because we don't have enough police officers right now.
We don't.
And we've seen that there are some very dodgy characters, that's putting it mildly, who have been recruited. Now, that has to be sorted out as well, surely.
I mean, I think that anyone in the public, anybody watching this now, would think that there was a standard that had to be met in every single police force, of the 43 police forces across England and Wales. You'd think that there was a vetting process that was standardised. You'd think there was a disciplinary process. Well, there isn't. You can have one process in Gwent Police that you'd have a different one in West Midlands Police. Now, you know, absolutely what we are calling for is a set of standards from the Home Office, from the Home Secretary, to say that you have to reach these certain standards, you have to be vetted, and when you commit or are being investigated for crimes like domestic abuse and sexual violence, like in the case of David Carrick, you are immediately suspended from your duties. At the moment, people are put onto desk duties. I think the public are aghast that is the case. And so you've got to have those standards. It protects the police, it protects the citizens of our country, and it just would, you know, we've got to rebuild that trust.
It's astonishing that you're even having to see that, to be honest with you.
Shocker, isn't it?
It is absolutely astonishing. Now, you know that the government are going to say to you, that's all very well, you can say whatever you like, where are you going to get the money, where are you going to get the people, how's it actually going to work? That's
I mean, well, the government will always say that, and that they will constantly tell us that they're putting in extra police, but they're putting back police that have been lost. So there used to be, in every neighbourhood team in the country, there used to be 19% of our police force used to work in our neighbourhoods. It's dropped down now to around 11-12%. So there has been a drop. Now, the government can say, how are you going to do that? The situation in our country is that nothing is currently working. Everybody who is watching this now will have had a situation where they couldn't get a passport, couldn't get a doctor's appointment. If they were going to call the police, it just simply was, you know, people just don't bother anymore.
Do you know, you're right,
people just don't bother. They say, what's the point? There's no point calling.
Terrible. That is... What an indictment.
What an indictment that people say, oh, you know, my kid's bike got nicked. I won't bother telling the police. I'll just get a crime reference number for the insurance. Our police are not just a third arm of the insurance companies in our country. And so when they say, oh, how are you going to do this? Well, there is a fully costed plan of basically back office economies that can be done, and it is fully costed to get these 13,000 police officers. But the cost of not doing it is more women, not trusting police officers, not coming forward. The cost of domestic abuse in our country is £66 billion a year. So going some way to try and tackle that, to make people feel like they can come forward, that we can get perpetrators behind bars, that we can build that trust again in police officers, it's going to save our country absolutely billions if we actually just go some way to trying to tackle it.
How do we change, though, the whole culture? Because it's about that, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's actually, and that's huge, that's enormous. I don't know how you actually can change. You know, it's like turning around an ocean liner.
Culture eats policy for breakfast is what they say.
Yeah,
you can make all the policy you like.
But you've got to change people's attitudes.
But the thing is, people's attitudes do and can change.
Yeah,
20 years ago, when I first started doing this work, the attitudes towards domestic abuse, you know, it's just a domestic, it's, you know, she was asking for it. Those things, the public really care about this now. I've watched that change. And so I've seen cultural change happen. I've seen cultural change happen within institutions. I've seen it happen within the police force. But it doesn't happen by accident. There has to be proper leadership from the government. There needs to be proper leadership from senior police officers. And where they're failing in that, they have to be held accountable. If misogynistic or racist culture continues to be perpetrated within your police force, then I'm afraid heads have to roll in those situations. Culture will change. We didn't want to wear seatbelts, did we, before they changed the law? And we all wear seatbelts. We
do. Don't even think about it anymore. You absolutely don't.
Culture does change.
What we need is probably an army of middle-aged women like Catherine from Happy Valley. That's what we need. We need
Catherine Kaywood in every town.
In every single town.
Every street. The world would be a better place.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for talking to us this morning. I have to do this right to reply. Labour keeps rehashing the same pledge to possibly introduce 13,000 police officers, which will include hiring staff without any actual powers. The government is hiring 20,000 extra police officers, they are saying, and they're going to have the most police ever in this country by next month. So we'll go back to that and make sure that actually does happen. Thank you, Jess.